in the bustling heart of Amoaka, a small but lively African village. The market was not just a place of trade. It was the beating heart of the community. Every week, men and women traveled from nearby hamlets carrying baskets filled with yams, palm oil, groundnuts, dried fish, and woven cloth. It was here that stories were exchanged, gossip spread like wildfire, and reputations were built or destroyed. On one particularly hot afternoon, the sun beat down mercilessly, glistening off the tin roofs and turning the air thick with the scent of fried plantain roasted maize. Women fanned themselves with raffia fans, while traders shouted loudly, hoping to attract customers. Among the crowd stood Ngozi, a young woman admired for her beauty and flamboyant style. Ngozi was known for her colorful wrappers, heavy jewelry, and the way she walked as though every stone on the ground was meant to bow before her. But behind that beauty was a heart clouded by pride. She loved being admired. She loved the whispers of envy, and most of all, she loved belittling those who she thought were beneath her. That day, her sharp tongue found a target. An old man, hunched and frail, shuffled slowly into the market. His clothes were ragged, his slippers worn out, and his beard white like moonlight. His walking stick tapped against the dusty ground with every careful step. He was a beggar, known only as Papa Ez. Children often mocked him, calling him dirty and useless, but most adults ignored him. To them, he was just another hungry soul surviving on scraps. Papa Ez walked toward the fruit stall, where Ngozi was boasting about her expensive waist beads. She stood surrounded by her friends, laughter ringing out like clashing cymbals. "Please, my daughter," the old man said softly, bowing slightly. "Just one kola nut or a little fruit to calm this hunger." Ngozi turned, her eyes narrowing. Then her lips curled into a cruel smile. Loudly, so everyone nearby could hear, she said, "Ha! Look at this one. Old man, you dare stand before me in those filthy rags and ask for my food? Do I look like someone who feeds dogs?" Her friends erupted into laughter, covering their mouths but not hiding the mockery in their eyes. A few traders looked away, embarrassed by her words, but none dared speak. Papa Ez's face fell, yet he said nothing harsh. Instead, he whispered, "My daughter, wealth and beauty fade. One day, you too will need the kindness of strangers." But Ngozi clapped her hands in ridicule. "Abig, who is listening to you? Go and preach to the dust that clings to your clothes. Here in this market, people respect riches and fine wrappers, not the stench of poverty." The old man sighed and walked away slowly, his shadow stretching long in the afternoon sun. The market continued, but whispers began to ripple. Some muttered that Ngozi had gone too far, while others chuckled, secretly pleased that she had once again shown her fiery tongue. From a corner stall, Elder Okik, the wisest man in the village, had watched the entire scene. His weathered eyes followed the beggar until he disappeared into the crowd. Stroking his gray beard, he murmured an old proverb. When a child mocks an elder, she mocks the path her feet will one day walk. The seed of conflict had been planted. What no one knew was that Papa Ez was not who he seemed. His past held secrets, and the humiliation Ngozi poured on him that day would soon bring the entire village together in ways they could not imagine. As the sun dipped, lower and shadows stretched across the market. Gossip carried Ngozi's cruelty from one stall to the next. By evening, even the smallest children were repeating the tale. Ngozi insulted the beggar. She called him a dog. The stage was set, and the winds of fate were stirring. Something was coming, something that would make everyone remember that words, once spoken, can never be taken back. The sun had barely risen the next morning when the story of Ngozi's cruelty began to spread like wildfire across Amuaka. In the compound where women pounded yam, the market incident was the first subject of chatter. At the palm wine tapper's hut, men laughed and shook their heads. debating whether Ngozi's words were bravery or disgrace. Even children who had not been at the market recited it with mischievous glee, dramatizing her cruel voice as they teased one another. In African villages, nothing travels faster than gossip. And this gossip carried not just amusement, it carried judgment. One woman, tying firewood onto her head, said, "How can a daughter of this land disgrace an elder so openly? Even if he is poor, he's walked years before her." Another woman chuckled, "Ngozi is young and foolish. She believes her beauty will last forever." But beauty without humility is like soup without salt, tasteless. By midday, the matter had reached the elders. They sat under the ancient Iroko tree at the center of the village, a place where disputes were settled and wisdom was shared. Elder Okik, with his staff resting on his lap, spoke first. "I watched it happen with these eyes," he told the council. "The beggar asked only for food, but our daughter Ngozi chose to mock him. Such disrespect burns my heart. Have we raised our children to forget the dignity of human life?" The elders nodded gravely. One of them, Elder Chaik, shook his head and muttered, "In our culture, the old are like sacred books. To shame them is to burn wisdom before it can be passed down." Meanwhile, Ngozi carried herself as if nothing had happened. She strutted through the village lanes with beads clinking on her ankles, tossing greetings without sincerity. When women whispered behind her back, she smirked. When children imitated her cruel laughter, she barked at them to mind their mother's pots. But beneath her proud exterior, a flicker of unease began to grow. For each time she passed a group, she noticed the way eyes followed her, not with admiration, but with disapproval. 3 days later, on the day of the big market, the beggar returned. His tattered clothes hung loosely on his bony frame, and his eyes seemed tired but piercing. He walked from stall to stall, and this time, people hurried to offer him small gifts: groundnuts here, roasted yam there, a gourd of palm wine from another hand. The humiliation Ngozi had poured upon him seemed to awaken compassion in the rest of the villagers. When Ngozi saw this, her chest tightened with anger. She hissed to her friends, "So now this dirty beggar is the star of the market? Just because I put him in his place? Fools, all of them." But the universe has its way of turning pride into lessons. That afternoon, Elder Okik rose from his stool and called out to the marketplace in his booming voice, "People of Amiwaka, gather here under the shade of the Iroko, for I bring a matter of the heart." The drums were struck lightly, and within moments, the traders and buyers crowded around. The beggar was invited to sit on a mat, while Ngozi, caught off guard, was beckoned to stand before the crowd. Her heart pounded. She had not expected such a public call. Still, she raised her chin and tossed her hair, determined to show no fear. Elder Okik lifted his staff and spoke. "Our village is known for respect. Respect for the earth, respect for our traditions, and above all, respect for the old. Yet 3 days ago, a shameful act was committed in the heart of our market. Ngozi, daughter of Amwaka, mocked this elder, this man who has lived longer than she has breathed. I ask you, people, what do we say to this?" The crowd erupted with murmurs. Some shouted, "Shame!" Others shook their heads. A few looked at Ngozi with pity, knowing the weight of the village's judgment was a heavy burden. Ngozi tried to defend herself. "Elders, hear me. This man is not my father, not my relative. He's just a beggar who dirties our market with his rags. Did I not speak the truth? Should we now pretend poverty is honor?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elder Okik's eyes burned into her, and his voice thundered, "Child, you speak as though wealth is a crown that never slips. Do you not know that today's rich man can be tomorrow's beggar? Do you not know that a stranger's rags may hide the robe of a king?" The beggar remained silent, his gaze steady, as if he were waiting for something. Elder Chaik added, "Ngozi, your words cut deeper than a spear. A village that forgets compassion is like a tree with rotten roots. It may stand tall today, but tomorrow it will fall. The people nodded, clapping softly in agreement. At that moment, tension thickened in the air. Ngozie's pride clashed with the elder's wisdom, and the beggar's quiet presence loomed larger than his frail body. Everyone waited, sensing that the story was not yet fully told. What no one knew was that the beggar himself carried a revelation, one that would soon turn every mocking laugh into stunned silence. The marketplace square had grown so silent that even the chirping of the birds seemed to fade. All eyes were on Ngozi, whose lips trembled though she tried to keep her chin high. The beggar still sat quietly on the mat, his hands folded, his eyes steady as a river that knows its depth. Elder O'Keek lifted his staff again. Ngozi, you have mocked an elder. You say he is nothing, just a beggar. But before we pass judgment, let us hear from the man himself. For in every story, the stone you kick may tell you its own tale. The beggar rose slowly to his feet. The crowd gasped as his frail frame straightened more firmly than before. His voice, when it came, was not weak at all. It carried strength that seemed to echo from beyond his years. "My children," he began, "I came to this village not as a beggar, but as a traveler searching for a home. Once, long ago, I was like many of you, surrounded by family, respected by my people. But life has a way of scattering fortunes like dry leaves in the wind. Bandits raided our lands. My children were taken. My wife perished, and I was left with nothing but my breath. Since then, I have wandered, seeking kindness among strangers. In some places, I found it. In others, I met scorn." His eyes turned to Ngozi. "When I stretched my hand that day, I did not stretch it for food alone. I stretched it to test the heart of this village." The people murmured, astonished. Ngozie's eyes widened, but she quickly hissed, "So what if you tested us? You looked filthy. You looked like one who had nothing." The beggar nodded slowly. "And yet, daughter, you judged me by my rags, not by my spirit. Did the sun not rise on you the same way it rose on me? Do we not breathe the same air? You mocked me, but you mocked the breath of life itself." The crowd gasped again. The women covered their mouths, and the men shook their heads in shame for Ngozi. Elder Chaik spoke with a heavy voice. "Ngozi, this man you scorned has spoken with the wisdom of ancestors. Whether he wears silk or sack, he is a man, and he is elder to you." At that moment, something unexpected happened. The beggar reached into his ragged bag and drew out a small beaded staff, warm but glowing faintly in the sun. Gasps filled the air again. Elder O'Keek's eyes grew wide with recognition. "That staff," he whispered. "It is the mark of the lineage of Ezobina, the great chief who vanished years ago in the raids." The beggar lowered his head. "Yes, I am Obina, once a man of wealth and land, now a wanderer. My bloodline was scattered, my title forgotten. But I carry the mark, for it is all I have left." The entire market fell to its knees in shock and reverence. The beggar was no ordinary stranger. He was a man of noble birth, a leader who had once protected his people. Tears welled in the eyes of many who had mocked or ignored him. But none looked more shaken than Ngozi. Her face drained of color, her lips parted in disbelief. The man she had ridiculed before everyone, the one she had dismissed as worthless, was in truth a man of great standing, broken by tragedy, but not by spirit. Elder O'Keek thundered, "Do you see now, people? Do you see the folly of judging by appearances? A rag can cover a king, and a robe can cover a fool. Ngozi has brought shame, not only to herself, but to our village, for disrespecting one who carries the scars of history." The crowd murmured louder, voices rising with indignation. Some cried for Ngozi to kneel and beg forgiveness. Others demanded she be punished with labor for her arrogance. Ngozi's knees buckled. She stammered, I did not know. I swear by the gods, I did not know." But Elder Chike silenced her with a raised hand. Ignorance is no excuse, child. A heart of humility does not need to know before it shows kindness. The yam does not ask whose stomach it fills. It gives itself to whoever hungers. The beggar Obinna looked at Ngozi with eyes both stern and sorrowful. Daughter, your words wounded me more than hunger ever did. Yet, I do not ask for punishment. I ask only that you, and all who mocked me, remember this day. The measure of your worth is not in beauty or wealth, but in the compassion you show the least among you. His words cut through the air like a blade of truth. Some villagers wept openly. Even the young children who had mocked his rags felt shame. Still, the tension was not fully broken. Elder Okik turned to the people. Shall we let this matter end with words alone? Or shall Ngozi prove with her actions that she has learned? The villagers shouted in unison, She must prove it. Ngozi looked around, panic rising in her chest. What do you want from me? She cried. Elder Oka's staff struck the ground. You will serve. You will fetch water for this elder. You will prepare his meals, and you will tend to his needs for 7 market days. Only then will we believe that you have repented. Until then, your pride will remain a stain on your name. The crowd cheered in agreement. Ngozi's eyes brimmed with tears of rage and shame, but she had no choice. For in a village, the judgment of the elders was law. As she bowed her head reluctantly, Elder Okik's voice rang one final time. Let this be a lesson to us all. Respect is not a garment we wear when convenient. It is the breath of our community, without which we cannot live. The beggar-turned chief lowered his head in gratitude, and the people bowed before him. But deep within Ngozi, the battle between pride and humility had only just begun. For the first time in her life, Ngozi found herself stripped of the admiration she once enjoyed in the village. The girl who used to walk through the market with her head high, basking in the whispers of men and the envy of women, now moved like a shadow. Wherever she went, eyes followed her not in awe, but in judgment. The command of the elders was clear. She must serve the beggar, who was now revealed as Chief Obinna, for 7 market days. And so, every dawn, before the roosters crowed, she walked to the stream with a clay pot balanced on her head. The villagers watched as the same girl who once sneered at others now bent her back to labor for a man she had mocked. Some smirked at her misery, while others prayed silently that the lesson would pierce her heart. On the first day, she fetched water and set it before Obinna without looking at him. Her face was stiff, her lips pressed tight. Obinna received it calmly, thanking her with the dignity of a man who had once been accustomed to service, yet bore humility in his voice. Thank you, daughter, he said softly. Water is life, and he who gives water gives life itself. Ngozi bristled at his gentle tone. She had expected scolding, perhaps mockery in return. But instead, his kindness unsettled her more than anger could. The second day, she was ordered to prepare his meals. She roasted yam and ground melon seeds, though she slammed the mortar more harshly than needed, her pride burning with each strike. When she placed the food before him, he bowed his head and prayed aloud. May the gods bless the hands that prepared this, and may bitterness in the heart dissolve like salt in soup. Ngozi clenched her fists, for it felt as if his words were arrows aimed at her soul. By the 3rd day, whispers filled the village. Has her heart softened yet? They asked one another. The elders watched closely, but pride still shone in Ngozi's eyes. She did the tasks, but her spirit remained stubborn. That evening, Mama Nina, the wise woman of the village, came to visit. She found Ngozi sitting outside Obinna's hut, her face stormy, her hands idle. Mama Nina lowered herself beside her and spoke in her calm, measured way. Child, she began, do you know why the yam must be pounded with patience? Ngozi frowned. Because it is tough, Mama. It takes time to make it soft. Mama Nina nodded. So too is the heart of a proud one. Life will pound you until you soften, until you can feed others with your spirit instead of choking them with your arrogance. Ngozi turned her face away, but the words clung to her like dew on morning grass. On the fourth day, a heavy rain poured upon the village. The stream swelled and the path became slippery. Ngozi, carrying her pot of water, stumbled and nearly fell. To her surprise, Obinna rushed forward despite his frail frame and steadied her. "Easy, daughter," he said. "The earth will always try to humble us. Do not fight it, flow with it, as the river does." Her heart jolted. How could he show her such care, after all she had done? That night, as she lay awake, his words echoed in her ears. For the first time, a crack appeared in the stone of her pride. On the fifth day, she found him sitting by the fire, polishing the beaded staff that revealed his true identity. She could not help but ask, "Why do you still carry it if you have lost everything?" He smiled faintly. "Because it is not wealth or land that makes a chief. It is the responsibility to remind others of the truth. This staff reminds me that even in rags, my spirit is not broken. And it reminds others that dignity is not worn on the skin, but carried in the soul." Ngozi lowered her eyes. His words pierced deeper than she cared to admit. By the sixth day, the people began to notice a change. Her steps grew slower, not from weariness, but from thoughtfulness. She no longer slammed the mortar. She listened when Obinna spoke, and though she did not yet smile, the sharpness in her eyes softened. But the true test came on the seventh day. That morning, as she approached the stream, she saw a group of children mocking another old man, one who walked with a limp and carried a crooked stick. They imitated his shuffle, laughed at his ragged wrapper, and called him names. Something stirred in her chest. For a moment, she saw herself reflected in those children. The same cruel laughter, the same heartless amusement. She dropped her pot and rushed forward. "Stop this at once," she shouted, pulling the children away. "Have you no shame? This man could be your grandfather. Would you laugh if age bent your own fathers' backs? Leave him in peace." The children scattered, startled by the fire in her voice. The old man, eyes wet with gratitude, whispered, "Thank you, daughter." As she lifted her pot again, her hands trembled. For the first time, she understood the weight of the pain she had caused Obinna. Tears blurred her vision as she carried the water back. When she placed it before him, she did not turn away quickly as before. Instead, she fell to her knees and bowed her head. "Father, forgive me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was blind. I thought pride made me strong, but it made me empty. Forgive me, not just for my words, but for the heart that birthed them." The market square was filled again, for the seventh day was the day of judgment. The elders and the people gathered, curious to see what transformation, if any, had taken place. Ngozi stood before them, her eyes lowered, her voice humble. "People of Amuaka," she said, "I mocked one who deserved my respect. I wore pride like jewelry, but it made me poorer than rags. I have learned that the worth of a person is not in their clothes, nor in their wealth, but in the kindness they show. Today, I bow my head not in shame, but in gratitude for the lesson that has saved me." The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted in murmurs of relief and approval. Elder Okik raised his staff. "People, you have heard her. What say you? Has she learned?" The villagers shouted, "She has learned." Obinna stepped forward, his frail figure glowing with quiet strength. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Child, you have walked through the fire of humility, and though your pride burned, your spirit has survived. I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because forgiveness is the gift that frees both the giver and the receiver." Tears streamed down Ngozi's cheeks. The people cheered, clapping their hands, stamping their feet, ululating with joy. Elder Chaik then delivered the final words. Let this story be carved into the memory of our children. Never again shall we laugh at a man because of his rags, nor mock an elder because of his weakness. For today, we have seen that the gods hide greatness in the most unexpected places. As the sun dipped low and painted the village in gold, the people dispersed, their hearts heavy with the weight of the lesson. Ngozi, once the proud beauty, now walked humbly beside Obena, her steps lighter than they had ever been.